Odysseus, Drill, Katir. How is everyone feeling today? Did you guys see the sneak peek that was shared with us by the gods of galley expense? Everyone knows what I'm talking about, right? Ether, I was mind blown. Like, I gave you the hand, Bodhi, and you already want my arm as well, bro. You want the alpha? Guys, C4 is going to be insane. Yeah, no, I'm just joking with you, Bodhi. I have been expressly forbidden on giving more information on that topic, and I'm just talking about this because Chris and Gareth are still coming. Oh, I see them. He, GM, gentlemen, Chris, Gareth, how are you guys doing?
Hey, hey,
Hey
sorry
guys,
for our
doing well.
tardiness.
No, no, no worries, my friend. We were discussing the the leak that Danny dropped. Oh man, it was insane. Uh, we are not allowed to talk to give more context on that, but if I were you, I would start looking at that picture and trying to decode the secrets that Danny has shared there, because there's a lot of stuff to digest over there. But yep, having said that, welcome everyone to another episode of the StarAtlas Economic Forum, where the legendary Chris and Gareth Raff come and decode the state of our economy and share their insights about how things are going, how the future looks like, and sometimes, if we behave properly, they share some alpha as well. As you guys can see, today I'll be the host. Santi and Dominic Vane, they are both in a very important meeting right now, but I'll do my best to make up for their absence. Chris, how are things going, my friend?
They are going well. We have so many different projects going on right now. It is kind of overwhelming, but yeah, things are going super well. I'm loving the progress that I'm seeing on our different products. And I don't know how much alpha there will be today. We've got a bunch of kind of data updates to go over and different topics that have been popular over the last couple of weeks within the community. So yeah, it'll be hopefully a good 12th monthly forum. So this is officially our 1 year anniversary of the forum, which is kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, I'm excited. Gareth, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. For those of you that missed the brew yesterday, there is alpha coming. There was a bit. Michael dropped a bit, but Jose, I'm not sure how much people have been talking about it, but a town hall is on the horizon. 4 to 6. Year wasn't specified. Year wasn't specified, but
Chris,
Michael.
Gareth is going over, bro. I like it, Gareth. Yes, we're planning a town hall. It's coming. Yes, I
Yeah,
like
if
it.
Michael said it, I feel that
Yeah, we feel a
I
little
can
bit.
say it. So
If the
Yeah,
CEO said it, then anybody can talk about it. It's totally fine.
yeah.
exactly.
That's the
Again,
company, the only company rule that we have regarding
yeah,
alpha.
yeah.
Wow.
Year wasn't specified. Could be 2040 for all we know, but
If it's
rest assured
2040.
it is coming.
No,
But yeah,
it's yeah, there's tons of different topics. I mean, most of the broad, the big things people are aware of. The C4 details are starting to disseminate. There are actually a couple. Sometimes I forget what the community knows about. I'm going to send a real quick
And they
message.
they know very little about C4 besides that it refers to claim stakes, combat, crafting hubs. Yeah, they basically know the name and
Yeah,
what the product entails.
I just sent a message. Just say, do you know if the,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah. Oh, that I already talked about that. I talked about this in a
Yeah,
forum.
yeah,
Yeah. No, free to play, or at least what we're, internally calling free to play, but it's got an official name. I don't think we've come out officially with the name yet, but yeah, it's been very busy around the Automata headquarters, which is everybody's home office. But yeah, let's hop into it. I think there's no reason to delay.
absolutely, Chris. Go for it, friend.
Let's let's just outline some of the topics for today. Gareth has a couple of really interesting topics. Well, first of all, it's just a community dashboard update. I think there may be just a few features that he's improved there, and then a faction fleet discussion, basically talking about the faction fleet transition to fleet rentals, and that's looking really promising. So we're excited to talk about that and the potential deprecation of score that we've been talking about for 2 years. And then I've got a couple of Sage topics that I want to go over, some data, some discussion as well regarding fix, sniping, potential new ship recipes, and a couple of other things. And then if we have time, we'll go into a little bit of C4. I've started my process of onboarding to the C4 product and really starting to nail down the economics and understanding how it will integrate with the current Sage product. And then we can go into a Q&A, though I think with the different Sage topics in C4, we'll probably address a lot of questions that have come up over the last month. But yeah, always happy to jump into a Q&A at the end. As we all know, this is an opportunity for everyone to get their say in, have their questions answered, and get access to information that they otherwise might have missed out on. So without further ado, pass it over to Gareth for the community dashboard update.
Sweet. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, no major releases this month. As some of you may know, we transitioned to a new backend. A lot of this month was mostly QA and optimization. Some of you did mention as well, you noticed it was faster last forum, and that will remain the case now. One of the main things with this optimization is that as these data sets grow, which they will grow quite substantially, especially with C4, the speed should hopefully remain the same. We've also fixed, within that QA, there are a bunch of underestimated Atlas emissions, for example, and a few other data issues that have now been resolved with the new backend. So we're going to put out a minor announcement just pointing to it, letting people know. But yeah, a lot of the smaller data errors have been resolved. We still have a tooltip bug. Again, very, very weird. And the tooltips, those are pop-ups when you hover over data. Some show 0 values, others show accurate values. But if you're just looking at the axes, the X and Y axes, those are accurate. It's just when you hover over some data points across a few of the different dashboards, it'll either won't show up or will only show up for certain values. It's very weird. I'm convinced it's a Looker Studio bug, which is the platform we're using. And their forums and stuff have pointed to it being a bug. So I'm going to trust that, and hopefully they resolve that on their end. But yeah, for now, that's the biggest outstanding bug. This new backend allows us to work through bigger tasks like fleet activity lookup, DAO treasury, and game activity wallet lookup, which have been in the roadmap now for about the last quarter. Those are massive data sets, so we did have to wait for this backend to finish being deployed, and then the QA and optimization to be done. So I think finally those are things that can continue to move along. So you can look forward to that in the short term. I also have a locker summary view that I want to push relatively soon. So that might be coming within the next week or so. Actually, I'll say, yeah, that's definitely coming in the next week or so. That's just been something I've used internally, which I think would be beneficial for you guys to see just what's going on with the Atlas Locker specifically. Then yeah, that's about it for the community dashboard update. Again, if you guys have any suggestions or things that you want to see, feel free to drop them in the chat. There are a few that aren't on this roadmap just because they're a bit farther down the line. But yeah, if you have anything you want to see specifically, feel free to drop them. And yeah, we can move on to the next slide if there aren't any major questions, Jose.
Gareth, Bodhi suggested something. The council has been talking about writing a PIP to pay someone to make DAO-related infographics and host them. I suggested that we reach out to you since you already have the dashboard, and you said you might be open to suggestions as far as specific charts. Can we figure out what types of graphs we are looking for and reach out to you about potentially adding them to the dashboard?
Yeah, that's very doable actually. The current goal for the dashboard, and it's like 95% there. We just need a few more things to be pulled in from our data provider side, but we're in its current state. It's basically a one-to-one with obviously a few benefits of interactability and like time period restrictions and filtering, but basically one-to-one with the current view. The current view doesn't update that much, and it's not unreliable per se, but this new view is much more consistent and up to date. So that's its current state. If you guys have things you want to specifically reach out about that aren't on there already, definitely, yeah, that's very much something we can work out and have pushed. Again, very open to basically meeting your needs in terms of data that you guys want to see. So very, very doable.
In terms of the point of contact, I would say Gareth is probably the correct one. So I think within the council community channel, where let me make sure that there's a community chat for council members, correct?
Yes.
I would say just ping Gareth within that chat is probably the best way to, best way to communicate those.
Yeah, and just I guess just a note, try to consolidate it into a summary message, just so I don't miss it. Sometimes when details are added below a ping, they get lost, or that's probably my fault. But yeah, just if you ping me in there, I can definitely take a look and respond, and we can get something going. Sweet. Yeah, we
Awesome.
can move on, Jose, if that's all you saw.
No, friend, please keep going.
Awesome. Yeah. So thanks for switching the slide there, Chris. I did just want to briefly talk about a couple of these visuals I threw together, as well as some of these data points. One thing we've been interested in watching and making note of is the transition from faction fleet to the rental program. So we don't include Armstrong and the faction claims program in this, specifically looking at score or faction fleet because of its relation to Atlas emissions. Armstrongs that are staked in faction fleet, though, they will be counted here. And this is pretty cool. These are some transition figures. So about 9 million in VWAP from non-Starbase players uniquely score players have now entered Star-based and committed contracts to the rental program. Now that 9 million does not include acceptance. That is specifically ships that have entered and have either interacted with a contract, aka they've been a part of a contract, or have just interacted with the program in general. So this VWAP basically has never been in Starbase before, these players that are bringing this VWAP over has never been in Starbase before. This is just all this residual score value coming over and interacting with the program. So that's pretty cool. We love to see that, and as you can see, it's picking up. If we put a line of best fit or a trend line there, it would be trending up over time. And that's the top graph you see in the orange. Then we also have another figure, and that's the basically earning potential of a single VWAP unit. So what I have on that second data point is approximately 20x more Atlas per single VWAP unit is earned in faction fleet rentals at the moment compared to score. And that's also coupled with 1.5 million in rental payments going out to I'm getting the names mixed up already. Rental program users compared to less than 1 million in emissions going out to score users. So there is some skew here. Obviously, bigger players with bigger fleets are going to be the ones transitioning over, the more active user base. But that earning potential in rentals compared to faction fleet is becoming quite increasingly more attractive. So for the most part, especially because over half of the ships are, I believe, quote unquote, negatively yielding, given the current resource prices in the markets right now, we don't see any reason, at least from the Econ side, why people would want to stay and score, except for the slight increase in passive behavior, I guess you can exhibit still in score. Fleet rentals is is just as passive in practice. There are a few more buttons to click, but getting that last, I guess, hump of people over will probably be based on just matching that level of ease, and that'll probably be done through tutorials and things like that. So that's a major point. I'm sure most of you guys, if you were in score, have at least partially transitioned over to rentals, or if you haven't, this might be a reason for you to do that. And of those faction fleet users remaining, only about 5% of total resource volume in the marketplace, and on most days less than 5%, is attributed to those faction fleet players, refilling their ships or stockpiling up R4. So it's such a minimal portion of both volume and players that we're pretty happy with the transition at this point. So, Chris mentioned the deprecation of score. That's something that's been a topic discussed internally, and I believe to the community pretty spottily, or I guess inconsistently over the last 2 years or so. It's becoming more and more of an option for us as we see these players decrease. Now, obviously, it's kind of a fallback for some people if either they're having inconsistency with Starbase or connection issues or something. We have seen people flip flop. So maybe it's not totally deprecated, but at least having it as a legacy program would be the minimum we'd want to be doing. So yeah, some pretty cool transition facts there. Again, if any of you guys are still in score, it's very much worthwhile for you to switch over to the rental market, especially because it's only been growing since launch. So PSA for you all out there.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback on you, Gareth, I don't think it actually makes sense to be on score right now, at least from the Econ perspective. Like those graphics, those metrics show how successful the fleet rental system is right now. Even in this V0 stage, I mean the benefits are pretty obvious. Like we see how this works, we see the Atlas moving between people. I'm super excited about this, and I see a very good future for this system at all. And yeah, Gareth, you touched on something very important, the closing score. Jindo is asking the chat like when we are closing. But yeah, I think every day we are one step more comfortable with closing score for good. I don't think this is something that will make it to the future of Star Atlas, right? With the systems that we have right now.
Yeah, now, Score is a very simple platform. Lock your ship, maintain it, earn some Atlas. Systems like that can be reintroduced in the future in more niche, specialized, I guess, gameplay loops. But yeah, in terms of just uh, a a legacy program as a whole, and just having all of the inactive VWAP stuck in there, you know, deprecating it would sort of force activation there of that VWAP and productive capability of that VWAP. And then, if it was really a problem, we can introduce it in some other way. Maybe you're manning a star base with your ships in order to defend against Tufa, and you earn some yield from that by parking it at a star base. But
Oh yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, something like that would
yeah,
make sense.
exactly. Yeah, but in its current form, we're definitely interested in deprecating it as a program. But yeah, no timeline on that, no details. Just given how minimal of an impact it has, and how many players are currently relying on it, it seems like something that'll be coming, relatively soon. Again, zero timeline to back that up. But the success of the rental market has just been incredible to see, and this transition just cements that. So.
Yeah, we have been talking about closing score pretty much since the launch of Sage, and we were really waiting for that catalyst moment in Sage where we felt like there was a way to, for people with large fleets to effectively rent out, but also just utilize the capital in some way, right? We didn't want to have somebody with a $2 million portfolio of ships all of a sudden with no way to employ those ships in the game. So what you would end up with is obviously like this mass exodus of volume or of VWAP because, hey, I don't really have any way to use these ships anymore. I don't want to commit to this Sage thing. And while it is true, we don't really want those people. Like, we're looking for the people who want to play Star Atlas and who want to engage in the Star Atlas universe, not necessarily these like idle people, though there is a place now for that kind of idle type of asset allocation. So what we wanted was we're not against this idle form of capital use, but what we were against was not utilizing the product suite that we want to push. We don't want Score to be kind of the end all be all. It's not the most elegant program. Another big issue with it is there's no plan for self-sufficiency. And basically, like, Score doesn't work without the token emissions curve. Sage can work without the token emissions curve, which is planned to run out, in like 2030 or something like that. That maybe it's 2035. I can't remember the exact date, but that curve, that emission will turn off someday, and we need a way to provide, to keep the game sustainable. We have Sage. So Score wasn't really going to be sustainable in the super long term. It was more of a stopgap. And now the fleet rentals is beautiful because it provides kind of that idle, usage, use case, while also supporting the larger ecosystem. So really happy with the performance of fleet rentals. The engagement rate is like 80%. So 8 out of every 10 fleets that get listed get rented out by a potential, somebody on the other end of that. So, yeah, I think it's realistic that we see Score shut down in the next within the year. We still are doing research to try and figure out, okay, how much volume, how much VWAP is still stuck in Score, and what's the profile of the player who's still stuck in Score. As you can see, lots of volume has moved from Score to Sage. So, if we're talking about, let's say that there's $10 million of VWAP sitting in score, and those people engage with the Star Atlas ecosystem in this like 5% per day, then we're probably okay potentially pushing those users out or pushing them into Sage, best case scenario. So yeah, thank you for those numbers, Gareth. Sorry I went on and on about the score transition, but probably soon. We're not in a huge rush, to be completely honest with you guys. We're working on a lot of different stuff. And other than the Atlas emissions, running score is kind of it's not really hurting us right now. So I would say it's a low priority, but it is something we're interested in doing.
Makes total sense, Chris.
So let's move on to hot topic, FIC sniping, so faction infrastructure contracts. These are the new kind of Atlas earnings mechanic. They're super, super popular, much more popular than LP. And as you can see from this chart, the amount of Atlas that is being redeemed via FIX has been climbing slowly over time. Since their introduction, and indeed with the addition of the Gen 2 FIC, which are the second kind of release of faction infrastructure contracts. Those, we call them the named FICs or the Gen 2 FICs or FIC 2. These are basically the 3 FICs that came out after the original 3 FICs. And you can see that the redemption rates and the amount of Atlas being redeemed via the Gen 2s is far greater than it was for Gen 1. We are this is one of my highest priorities right now. I've been involved in the data for the last week and, well, for the last month, just trying to spend all of my spare time trying to understand this issue and how we can potentially resolve it. One thing that we did recently to try and curb emissions, which actually worked in order to curb the emission rate of Atlas, we introduced a new condition for FIC refills. We said before that if a single gen runs out at within a faction, then we'll just refill that gen. Now we have a condition that both generations need to run out before we'll refill either generation. So if Gen 2 runs out, as you can see in the later part of that top graph, it just runs out. And until Gen 1 runs out, which is that blue part, the blue stacks, Gen 2 is not going to refill. So what you see are these massive spikes, absolutely astronomical spikes. And what's happening is that all of the Gen 2 emissions that used to happen throughout the week are now happening on 1 and 2 days because those FICs do not get refilled when they run out. And what we're ending up with is everybody is crafting Gen 2s to begin with because they're a better deal. And then there's a slow trickle of Gen 1, but very low interest level in Gen 1. Most of the interest is in Gen 2, and it's pretty much run out by the second or third day of emissions. I anticipate this problem will become more and more pronounced over time, and by the time 2-3 months has gone by, we'll end up with every single Gen 2 FIC being claimed on Thursday, which is when the refill happens. And then 0 Gen 2s being claimed on the days after. So you can see the breakdown here in this top chart of Gen 1 and Gen 2 claims on each day. So what we're measuring here is when you go and sell a FIC to the to the DAO buy order. So the DAO puts out a buy order for a single FIC for 2.2 if it's a Gen 2, and for 2 Atlas if it's Gen 1. And then that bottom chart shows us the total redemptions, and this isn't not all time. I forget what it is. I think it's like since the introduction of Gen 2, but don't quote me on that. But this is going to be pretty consistent for your breakdown in terms of total amount of Atlas claimed by wallet. And you can see I've got the top, 20 wallets. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, I think it's the top 20 wallets. And then there's a typo. It should say less than top 20, not less than top 10. So you've got the top 20 wallets and then all other wallets. And what you can see is there's a massive, massive inequality here where the top 2 players account for pretty much the entirety of the emissions for the bottom in minus 20 players, which is roughly, let's call it, of people who participate in the Atlas program since the introduction of Gen 2, let's call it 800 players, 800 people. So this is a pretty, this is a pretty dramatic, wealth distribution. It's not unexpected. This is pretty typical honestly, it's pretty typical of video games, but it's especially typical in crypto and in financial markets to see this kind of a wealth distribution. So extreme wealth distribution, not to be unexpected. So the question that I had is, okay, well, let's investigate this. Who is claiming in the first couple of hours? Are there people who are getting cut out of this market? Are there specific people who are literally claiming everything? That's what we want to investigate is, okay, who are the biggest culprits, and how does this claiming on these Thursdays, which is when the refill happens, how's that looking and how's it working? Today is a Thursday, today's a refill, so we're going to see tomorrow, we're going to see the same exact spike that we saw today. So what I wanted to do was literally just plot out every single transaction for the first, basically over the span of 1 week. So you can see I cut the data at April 25th, which was the last refill, and I just look at the last week of claim actions. And this is not broken out by player or by time period. This is every hour, every single claim that happened. What was the breakdown? And you can see this is a stacked bar chart. And so you can see like the number one claim was by a wallet called 5D65PR. And they claimed 5.3 million Atlas in one transaction. Now, I need to investigate this because I was under the impression that this amount literally should not be possible. But it's showing up here in our on-chain data as a single transaction of 5.3 million Atlas. So we do need to kind of figure out what's going on here. It's possible there's a program issue, but it's also possible that there's some sort of functional thing that we can do to change the gameplay in order to make it more kind of a little bit more consistent and fair for some of those smaller players. So the question here is, okay, well, we've got these big claimers, but as long as people aren't literally being cut out from being able to claim Gen 2, as long as mostly everybody is able to participate, then it's not a huge issue. And you can see in the bottom visual, I have broken down the number of unique takers, the number of unique claimers by week for each generation type. So you have Gen 1 in blue and Gen 2 in red. So what this is showing us is that on March 28th, there were about 25 people who claimed the Gen 1 recipe and about 40 who claimed the Gen 2 recipe. So you can see there are more Gen 2 claimers and fewer Gen 1 claimers. What that means is that more people are claiming the more attractive recipe than there are people who are claiming the less attractive recipe. And that's actually that's kind of a good thing. We don't mind seeing that, but you can see that trend, or that relationship, I should say, reverses around April 11th. And while we don't have data for today, you can see the week of April 25th. We're just going through yesterday. We're gonna still need to finish out the week. We don't have the last day of data for the week of April 25th, so it's a little bit more dramatic. But you can see that the portion of people who are claiming Gen 1 compared to those who are claiming Gen 2 is starting to, that difference is starting to open up. So what's happening is there are more people who are, you could say, having to claim the less attractive recipe than those who are claiming the more attractive recipe. And this is not a trend that we'd like to see. We want to see this mostly even. Basically, okay, it looks like the same number of people are getting access to Gen 2 that are getting access to Gen 1. And what that tells us is that, yes, maybe you didn't quite get it's possible you didn't quite get as much as you would have liked. And we can measure that as well, the amount per user between the two recipes. But at least everybody's kind of getting able to participate. Now, if we see this ratio start to go down even more, such that, let's say, only 10 people are accounting for all of the the Gen 2 transactions, which I don't know how this April 25th week is going to play out, but it's looking a little bit rough. I'd be very surprised if we were able to get above 40 unique users. If we were to just take this April 25th week, this bottom right week at face value, this is telling us that less than 20 people are making up for the entirety of all of the emissions of the Gen 2 recipe, which is more attractive, and everybody else is being forced into Gen 1. So that would be an undesirable impact. Okay, so I've kind of outlined some of the issues. I also wanted to take this opportunity to point out over-the-counter trading. And it's kind of interesting because one of our largest over-the-counter trader, 6BQFK, who accounts for about $40,000 of over-the-counter trade since the beginning of Sage, or Starbase, I should say, or the introduction of local markets, sorry. That person also happens to be one of our biggest culprits here. You can see they're number 3 in terms of the amount of Atlas that they've claimed. So we've kind of got this, this scary thing where people are just completely dominating the market, and we have to ask ourselves, what are some solutions that we can implement to try and combat this? So here's a list of 4 potential solutions. There are other solutions, but, and if you guys want to see that OTC chart again, since I know that's probably not something that anybody has seen, the x-axis on the left-hand side is a bit rough. That is basically just a small sample of the different wallet. That's the first 5 digits of the wallet ID. Now, as you can see, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of lines, and there are only a couple, like maybe 2 dozen IDs. So kind of ignore the ID thing, but you can kind of get a sense of the number of OTC trades per profile and the value of those trades per profile. You can see we've been trending up on our value over time. It seems to maybe be stabilizing, but the number of the count of trades has also seemed to be seemingly increasing over time. So kind of interesting to see that. Will not tell you how I identify over-the-counter trades, though I imagine there are some very smart people in our audience who could probably deduce that. Let's go through some of the solutions that we're thinking about for fixed sniping and how to solve this issue. To be clear, people claiming the fix is not a problem. We're not upset with these whales who just happen to have, the OTC combination with sniping, Bodhi, is actually a really interesting point. I think that there's an argument to be made that you're potentially combining your OTC activity, your trading activity, with this sniping activity. Anyway, I just wanted to show that relationship, not necessarily making any sort of causal, declaration here, but. Yeah, so let's move on to solutions. So there are a couple of easy solutions and a couple of more difficult solutions. So the first one would be to just adjust the refresh schedule. And this would basically be to eliminate the refresh schedule. So the fix would only refresh when all fix are out. Now, this one is easy to implement, but it doesn't really get at the main problem. Now, there are 2 primary issues, I would say. From my point of view, there's an emissions issue. I want. Sorry, I'm simultaneously reading the comments. I'll return to your guys' comments in a moment. So I want emissions to be around. We want emissions to be about 8.5 million per day of Atlas. That's kind of what our original model. 2021, that was the original projection, was roughly 8.5 million Atlas per day, especially around this time. Now, we are currently sitting at around 10.8 million per day on average. Now, that was accelerating. And then we put in this new change that I talked about earlier about, okay, now you can only claim, now fix only refill once both Gen 1 and Gen 2 are completely claimed. Now, another way that we can further lower the emissions rate is to add an additional constraint that says, hey, we don't actually auto refresh on Thursdays anymore. We auto refresh whenever the fix run out. Now, this definitely is going to help curb emissions because it's going to slow down, it's going to spread out the claiming over time. It's not going to spread out here, and here's where the kind of issue lies. It's not going to spread out how quickly people are able to claim. So the moment those recipes refill, those whales are going to come in and they're going to claim them immediately. So it solves one problem, Atlas emissions, or at least it helps to mitigate Atlas emissions, which I still think we need to pull down even with this change. We need to pull real Atlas emissions back in. But that's a different discussion. So this auto refresh adjustment will solve the Atlas emissions problem, but it doesn't really address the problem of whales coming in and claiming all of the Gen 2 recipes before anybody gets a say. So that is not necessarily a perfect solution, although I think it's an interesting kind of stopgap measure. It also adds in randomness to the refresh. If you know that the refresh is going to happen at exactly 2 a.m. on Thursday morning, well, it's much easier for you to snipe than it is if you're like, oh, I think that the refresh is going to happen, because people are crafting them at this rate or they're claiming them at this rate. It makes it a little bit more interesting and a little bit more strategic, perhaps. So that's the first option. Very easy. To be honest with you guys, unless there's like a massive, unless people are completely against this is something that I would be very interested in implementing. The second option here, which I like quite a lot, and it was actually supposed to be a part of the original design. You can see I've got the difficulty level there is pretty hard. This is a difficult one to implement. And so this would be to force the craft locations to be all non-redemption locations. So the problem right now is you can craft a fic at the same spot that you can sell it. Now, this isn't like going to solve all of our problems in the entire universe, but it does help us to slow down the rate at which people are able to liquidate fics into those buy orders. Okay, so this one, again, none of these are like clear cut, solutions to the problem, except for maybe number 3 there, but you guys aren't going to like number 3. So anyway, back to number 2 here. If we could possibly prevent people from being able to craft the fix at the redemption locations, that would help to, all of a sudden, you need some sort of freighting operation in order to get those fixed to the new location. You do have to transport stuff. You can't just, it makes stockpiling just a little bit more difficult. Are there ways to get around this? Absolutely. And that's why, if I'm being honest, this is probably not a solution that we're looking to implement anytime soon, just because it is difficult. Right now, the only way that we can limit the recipes available for crafting at a specific starbase are through the starbase's tier. Now, most places have a starbase that's over, tier 3. And it also varies by the location. So it's not like we can easily use starbase tier in order to mitigate where you can craft fix. So number 2, probably not a great option. Number 3, and this is probably the most controversial one. Number 3 would be to basically try to bring Gen 2 in line with Gen 1. We launched with Gen 1 originally. There wasn't really a whole lot of conflict there. There wasn't a whole lot of negativity. People liked the new system. They liked the fact that they could earn Atlas in one of 2 different ways. They could do LP and they could do the FIC. Now, a couple of conditions have changed since we launched that Gen 1. Namely, LP is getting a pretty mundane because now the only LP resources are pretty much upkeep materials and SDUs. We have a similar issue with LP contribution that we have with the FIC2, where you come in and you have a whale who contributes 100% of the supply, and then there's nothing left for anybody else. Again, that's another issue that we could address. So number 3 here would basically just be to nerf Gen 2. Gen 2 is a really, really aggressive. It's a much more high yield kind of asset compared to Gen 1. Fewer crafting steps. It's faster to make. It requires less crafting time. So to be honest with you guys, this is one of my certainly one of my favorite options. Obviously, I want a cooler economy. I want things to cool off a little bit. It's just a bit hot. So that's one thing that I'm thinking about is to just readjust the Gen 2 recipe, or to deactivate the Gen 2 recipe altogether. Because where we were with Gen 1 in terms of the tokens emission was highly I mean, it was a very good place. Emissions were right where we wanted them. We seemed to have a lot of control. Emissions were happening every day. We didn't have this massive blasty, okay, everybody contributes everything all at once. We had a much smoother kind of emissions schedule. So that's definitely a desirable effect. So number 3 is highly attractive to us. And the number 4 is a much more is similar to number 2 in that it's pretty difficult to implement, but this would be to change the mint each cycle. So each time we refresh, we would change the mint. So this would require quite a lot of communication on our part to communicate, hey, each week any unspent fix are worthless is basically what would have to happen. The other thing it does is all of a sudden we've got tons of useless assets floating around, which is again not super desirable. But what it does help us do is it kind of eliminates the ability to stockpile. Now you could still stockpile resources and then convert those resources, yada yada. I get that, but this would potentially help to mitigate kind of that blastiness that we see. So that's definitely an attractive option. But I think that in terms of the implementation and, to be honest, the communication, it would be pretty tough because then we'd have to communicate this to new players and we'd have to communicate it to you guys. That's pretty tough. And yeah, and again, like if there's no way to offload those old recipes, like Laranoy just mentioned, that's pretty tough because what are you just going to have a bunch of dead recipes in your account? We tried to avoid that with the golden tickets, but still people have golden tickets and they're kind of these fun things. We don't want by the end of the year, we'd have 52 different fix if we were to do it this way. So Bodhi, what about adding a new fic? I like this idea a lot, and this would basically be the idea. If we were to add a new fic, we would replace Gen 2. Gen 2, I'm gonna be pretty candid, is a little bit I don't like to use the word broken, but it's broken compared to Gen 1, and it could be greatly improved in terms of the sustainability of the game economy. So by change Gen 2, we could also just replace that with get rid of Gen 2 and replace it with another a Gen 3. And to be honest with you guys, the original plan was to kind of have these fix cycling and creating new fix on a regular basis, a regular cadence, which I'm happy to kind of introduce that. It's a tough balance because we know that people we know that people like consistency, right? If you show up to work every day, you want to know that you're going to get like this paycheck at the end of the day, or you're going to do this specific task. It's not fun when you show up to a place and you show up to a restaurant and they're like, oh, this is actually a Mexican restaurant. It's no longer an Indian restaurant. It's like, okay, great. I was looking forward to Indian food and I got Mexican food instead. So anywho, those are our 4 potential solutions. I think that 1 and 3 are the most likely to be implemented in the medium term. There are some other notes here at the bottom that I want to bring up. We're also considering, we've been talking about this for a while, introducing an extra small recipe into the redemption recipes, and this would basically this would basically be a new ship, new recipe. We would have never sold it before. And one thing that I know we would get some pushback on is we would need to make it less competitive than the current recipes. And there's a reason for that. The first reason is we want to try and support the price of the ship. The second reason is, as much as it pains me to say, if we were to launch this thing such that it was a more attractive option to whales than the Mamba X and the Calico Max Hog, then these things would be minted out pretty much instantaneously. So we kind of need to make them less attractive, and that's not great. But there is obviously there's gains to be had when you scale. Yeah, please define less competitive. So we would probably price this asset in its crafting recipe to the value, to the origination value was the idea. So do with that information what you will. But But that's a pretty interesting option. You know, I was chatting with Santi. We were chatting yesterday, and I was like, oh, I don't know if this is a good idea. I'm not sure how the community will react. And he was like, well, you can add it, no harm. So I don't know. Sometimes there is harm just in adding stuff. It's like I don't want to put a big middle finger out there, but at the same time, I want to give people interesting stuff to do in the economy that's not just FIC grinding and LP grinding. So definitely something we're interested in doing. I would love to get a gauge from the community, especially the guys here, the people here in this audience. These are the most committed people. Yeah, Earther says give us C4, and we can chat about C4. And I think that's actually kind of looming over all of this. Is this question of, okay, well, why do all of this if there's C4 coming out soon? Let's see. How do we feel about this proposal?
I see lots of people typing. Let's wait for a little bit.
So, Ager, the one thing I will say is, like, adding this recipe is virtually no lift. This is like, we can get this added in 15 minutes. So would not be taking away from C4 development.
Yeah, Chris, I see lots of different opinions. Lerno think it's yeah, I see some common ground saying that maybe if it's something unique, like a new ship, a new vessel that was not sold, it would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, for a collection's sake, I like this as well.
I see Earther says that he likes proposal 1 and number 3. And I love that. And when they come after us, you're going to have to defend me and be on my side, Earther.
Yeah, exactly. You
I'm
need
gonna
to
have
be
to
there.
Be my
White
shield.
Knight. Exactly.
Let's see. Why do Ooster and Iron only on one side of the map compared to Oni and Mud? Okay, that is an interesting question. So, Taker Outs, I'm just going to answer this real quick just because it's topical. With C4 coming out, I'm pretty sure any map changes will not be probably addressed before C4 because the map is going to change so dramatically in C4. There was a suggestion for fix above. What about this?
Yeah. Lerno
is it Lerno? Okay, he just posted it again. An idea, what if we create FIC3, which is FIC1 plus FIC2, and sell price of 4.2 Atlas? That's interesting. So just combine the two. Would we still have FIC1 and 2? So if we still have FIC2, so you can think of, like, I would think of the yield of these FICs as being additive. So FIC1, let's call it, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 3. And then FIC2 on a scale of 1 to 10, it's an 8. You combine those, the resulting asset is going to be a lower yield. And so it'll necessarily be less attractive than FIC2. So we're still kind of in the same, I think we're still in kind of the same territory. I do like the idea. I would be in favor of just doing a FIC3 recipe, which is just FIC1 plus FIC2 is equal to FIC3, and replace the current emissions with that, because then that also solves the issue of idle FICs. So if, for example, if we were to shut down FIC1 and FIC2 buy orders, and people have millions of FICs saved up, and they go, what the heck? Now I can't trade this in. What this introduces is the ability for players to still burn those, which is kind of cool. Earther says, if you keep, I will say, like, no matter what we do, it's going to involve having to do something with FIC2. Like, we're not going to just be able to keep FIC2 stable the way it is. It'll have to, or static. It'll have to change. So we could do FIC1 and then FIC3 is FIC1 plus FIC2. That could be an interesting dynamic. Messages are rolling in. Supply FIC2 to force people to go FIC3, and finally. So I kind of disagree here. To reduce the supply of FIC2, I think that's just going to end up causing people. I think that just kind of exacerbates this issue of whales sniping the recipes. But yeah, no, this is a really interesting idea, Larinor, and I think considering we want to do 3, I think that's an interesting way to implement it. But yeah, the one thing I do like about the comments I'm seeing is like it seems like everybody's kind of on the same page that we do need to figure something out with the emissions. They're definitely running too hot, and if that means like, hey, Atlas emissions per user is going to have to go down a little bit, then that's just what we're going to do. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that this disproportionately impacts larger players, and to be honest, our larger players have really good yields already, so I'm less worried about that. So, yeah. Is there anything else? We have some other topics that I wanted to touch on. We've got 5 minutes left.
I did see a quick question above, which I think I could address. It's where are you going to put the Atlas of score, assuming it's deprecated? That, you know, we're not directly looking at a one-to-one swap. Like we wouldn't deprecate and say, okay, there was 600,000 Atlas being emitted in score. How do we move that into Sage? It would more so be by design or integrated into Sage already, affixing that discrepancy, or we just completely shut off that tap as a whole. So, you know, 600,000 Atlas a day is, per the example, that's not a huge amount, obviously, compared to what we're seeing now. So, very minimal, but if we were to completely shut it off, but again, we could always account for that in future Sage updates before score is deprecated. But that Atlas will it's all part of the same emissions curve. So it's more just, where those taps are turned on versus where they're not. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, we can always give it to the community team, right? I mean, good use of the residual Atlas emissions.
You'll have to take that up with the big guys.
Any plans to use POLIS inside the game? That's a cool question. I mean, obviously, we want the voting mechanism to be more kind of. Would be cool if that was more integrated with the game itself, but no plans for like direct POLIS usage in the game as of right now, as far as I'm aware.
That's definitely more of a Dan question, I think. Dan isn't here, but yeah, there's I know there are plans for POLIS. I don't think we've been made aware of them yet, but yeah, nothing for Starbase at the moment.
All right, we've got 2 minutes left. I do want to just address a few other topics real quick, and this is probably another 30-minute discussion, so I apologize for the speed here. We kind of packed a little bit too much into this presentation, but I did want to, we are going to make an official announcement, but I did want to just bring this up to you. We are planning a food update to the game right now. It's in the works, and this will be to remove food upkeep requirement. I don't know why I didn't finish that sentence. You can still redeem LP for food contribution, but you'll end up, but there won't be a reduction in the speed of crafting due to food upkeep. So basically, we're removing food upkeep. There were some kind of undesirable effects. First of all, it's really difficult to plan. Second of all, most of the food upkeep landed on literally like a handful of players, so it just kind of seemed like a moot point. Small players can't do anything. If you're a small player and you contribute like a day's worth of food, it's going to last 2 seconds. So it was a really cool idea, and we're still going to try to return to this, of course. But I think that it's pretty well established at this point that the food upkeep mechanic isn't really working as design had intended it to work. So we're going to plan on basically reducing that to the upkeep requirement to 0. So you can still contribute food to get LP, but it's not going to like speed up the Starbase. Starbases will basically have base 100% efficiency. And you guys can thank me for that 100%. I think Michael was he was like, oh, we could do like, half of the initial reduction. But I just figured because I'm going to have part B coming in here, I wanted to get you guys in my good graces. We are going to be increasing food consumption for ships. So the way that there was an update, this was months ago. We shut up, Victor. Sorry, getting back to the task at hand. The way that there was an update to the game that happened a couple of months ago. This was honestly probably 6 months ago to a year ago. I can't remember when we put this through, but basically it was like a refactoring of how food works. And food was basically scaled to the number of crew that you had. Well, I think that the intention of this was good. It had a detrimental impact in that food is basically worthless. If you are a commander ship, for example, yes, Leonor, we are planning on hopefully fixing the Max Hogs food consumption in this update. If you're a commander, for example, on a successful scan for SDUs, you're paying about 0.5% of the value of those SDUs in food. If you're an extra small, you're paying more like 20%. So this discrepancy basically causes it's basically a commander can mine the amount of food that they need for a year in a matter of minutes or a matter of hours, versus an extra small who basically has to constantly be refilling, mining for food in order to keep up with their food costs. The food cost proportion is completely out of whack. So we're trying to fix that with this update. Now, it's not going to scale. It's not going to scale as aggressively as emissions scale with ship class, but it will scale significantly more aggressively. So we're going to see about a 20x increase in the food consumption for a commander, a 0x or a 1x increase or no increase in the food consumption for an extra small, and then everything else will be kind of in the middle. So that is something that we're going to do. I've been wanting to do that for a while, and I felt like it was a good time to do it in combination with the food upkeep requirement deprecation. One other thing that's going to happen with this update is we're going to add for scanning ships. They currently have no advantage when it comes to scan cooldown, and we felt like that didn't really make sense. So we're going to basically all scan ships are now going to have a 50% reduction in scan cooldown with this update. So I should have added that as point C. Fleet scoring, we're over 2 minutes, so I'm not really going to talk about all of this stuff. I know you guys wanted to talk about C4. To be honest with you guys, I think that next month will be a better time to talk about C4 because we really have just started to get really deep into C4 planning, especially on the economy. If we thought transitioning from the score economy to the Sage economy was hard, then transitioning from the Sage economy to the C4 economy is going to be even more difficult. So lots of interesting stuff happening with C4. With the fleet rentals, I want to make one quick comment. We've had a lot of great feedback in terms of, hey, these are the variables we think are important. Here's the variables we don't think are important. Here's the weighting you should use. And I will try to get that update through where we adjust to a limited number of variables per fleet score, per the mining score, scanning score, and cargo score, and adjust the weights according to the feedback we've received. So hopefully those fleet scores will be more reflective of kind of what you guys are expecting. I'd also like to add all the fleet stats to the rentals page. This is a much bigger lift. I'm not sure how likely we are to get that in. And then, point C here, we have limited resources right now working on C4. So we have limited resources for other projects because we're so focused on C4. So TBD on how quickly we're able to get this out, guys. But it is definitely, it's something that we want to do. It's feedback we've received, but just know that it's not something that is, it's nowhere near as high priority as C4. But yeah, I think we've answered quite a few questions. We're 4 minutes over. This was a packed chat. Sorry for the chaos and how quickly we had to whip through this. But hopefully you guys feel good about things. I'm feeling really good. I'm really wanting to pull Atlas emissions down. But other than that, I feel like we're in a really good place. We've seen even in this turbulent environment, we've seen relatively stable or more stable user numbers than we have seen in previous downturns. So that's really cool to see. So just know that the economy is in a good place. We have lots of participants in our economy, and I think that things are just going to get better from here, probably. So, yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Since we are way over the hour, Gareth, any last comments, my friend, before we close?
No, I mean, thanks, Chris, for going over all that. I think it's super valuable. Oh, there goes the fire alarm in my building. So perfect time to end.
Start running, Gareth.
Thank you,
No,
guys.
it's usually some kids messing around, but yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you, everyone. This was the Econ Forum number 12, 1 year of Econ Forum. I'm super happy and proud of the work that the Econ team is doing. So, yep, we'll see you guys next month, probably with some C4 GC theory crafting and updates. Thank you,
Mhm.
everyone, and have a great day. See you all on the next Econ Forum. Bye bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys. See ya.